evening, America. My name is Osei-Frimpong, and tonight I'm going to make a short case for ableism. And I say this because America works because Americans work. And I'm not just talking about making money in civil society and earning their daily bread. I'm talking about working for their families, raising their kids, and, mowing lawns and doing all the things around the house that make a home life appropriate, and working with the kids and all that way. You have to actually be functional. You have to do things, and you have to do things that are not natural and immediate. You have to learn how to do things. And I'm also not just talking about civil society and family. I'm also talking about America works because Americans actually have to be politically astute. This isn't one of those nations where we just let other people decide everything and determine everything as long as they pay us off not to make a fuss. Arguably, Saudi Arabia is one of those nations. But for the most part, Americans, if they're going to be a self-governing people, which is one of the reasons why, Benjamin Franklin supported the post office and libraries, we need to know stuff and be able to do stuff and be able to talk and understand arguments. And this is not something you come out of the womb able to do. So we need to actually train to do these things, which is why we have compulsory schooling, not just so that you show up for schooling as a form of daycare so your parents can work, but actually compulsory schooling so that you have to learn things in order to be an American, and not just learn things to do things. So part of being an American and part of the way the nation functions is by having functioning people who know how to do things, not just things in civil society, but also family things and political things, working with other people and understanding arguments and all of that stuff that need to be trained. And that's why we have compulsory education. So America works because Americans do work. And this illusion that we don't have to get serious about the training we do for Americans to work, not just job training, but also, be good family people and be astute political people. They have to learn things. We have to, your education is actually a part of my freedom because I need you to actually understand the quality of arguments that I'm laying down. What was the Rock's line? Are you putting down what I'm smelling or something like that? Anyway, America works because you can understand the arguments, and I need you to understand the arguments so that we can have political deliberations and we can govern together in this republic. And that only happens if I know that you've been in school and you know certain things and we come from a shared culture, and I know you know how to think about certain things in certain ways and know the language in a certain way and can follow arguments, and that you've been schooled. But none of this is natural. A lot of this is acculturated and a part of the educational system that you've been kind of matriculating through. This all goes to say that we have a vested interest in making sure that people actually learn how to do certain things. Like, you can't be an American and not be able to do certain things. Not just not participate in civil society in a productive way, but also, be able to be a productive family member or work in a family, and also be able to, read a ballot and handle arguments and understand a paper and be somewhat intelligible and intelligent, right? So you could either consider that condition ableist, or we could just consider ourselves like robust Democrats who believe in democracy, and democracy presumes a certain amount of competence that needs to be enculturated and developed. And I say this because I came out with a plan last week that I think simply we should pay the family of every kindergartner $20,000 as soon as they can come into kindergarten and recognize phonics. And then there should be a $10,000 test every year after that where it goes to the family, not the child, the family, and because the family is responsible for making the child appropriate. And I think that would align people's incentives, parents and families' incentives, in a way that's actually productive of America, productive of a democratic society. Because right now you can have all sorts of families. The other kind of family where kids can't learn, that's still kind of legitimate in another political economy. But in this political economy, I need you to be able to understand me and be able to read what I write, and I need to be able to read what you write, and I need you to think at a certain level. So we need to incentivize families that grow kids who do those kinds of things. So we need to incentivize families to, instead of raise their kids this way, raise them that way. And so I got some pushback on this idea from liberals who said, what about disabled kids? And I'm like, well, look, man, we can't build an educational system around people who can't do things. The purpose of education is to get you to be able to do and understand things. So if you're disabled, we got to deal with you in another pot of money. And now if you're disabled and going to be a functioning member of our democracy, that part of that's going to be a problem, because not just our civil society can't operate when everyone, if people can't do things. Our politics can't operate if I can't depend on you to be able to read and follow an argument. And I don't know how well our families can operate if I can't depend on people to raise their kids in a certain way. Right? So we can't have all of our policies built around disability or the inability to universalize a policy with the understanding that America works and America is for the abled. If this were a charity nation, like a caretaker nation, then it wouldn't be for the abled. But for the most part, America has to work because Americans are somewhat able, and not just in civil society. So it's not just a matter of being able to climb things and swing hammers, although that's nice too. People need to be able to climb things and swing hammers, and most people need to be able to do those things. But also intellectual stuff. You can't have a democracy and say that you can't expect other people to read or be able to follow arguments. You can't have a functioning democracy that way. You can't have a civil society and expect everyone to have Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue syndrome so they can't actually deal with their kid, because they get too tired and they can't be expected to deal with their kid, because kids have a bounty of energy. So there's this idea that you can have a nation of disabled people who aren't expected to be able to do anything. Now, everyone gets slowly disabled as they age in terms of climbing stairs and stuff like that. That's fine. But for the most part, we need to understand this is a nation of doers. And doers also need to be able to think and understand what they're doing and communicate what they're doing. And not just political doers, but also civic doers and family doers. Lots of different kind of doers, but all of those doers take knowledge that we need everybody to have. And civil society is a little bit different because we don't need everybody to be able to do every kind of job. But for politics, for example, we need everybody to be able to understand the policy that they're voting on and understand the arguments that the politicians are putting through. So insofar as compulsory education is educating you to be able to sustain this nation as it is, or as it could be, or as it should be, and understand what that means, then we should be incentivizing people to actually get the quality of education that they need. And not just assuming that because some people are disabled in terms of intellectual or invisible disabilities, that we gear all policies around, democratic governments towards that quality of disability. Now, there's this notion that a nation that is accommodating for all disabilities will also suitably educate and develop the able-bodied populace, which isn't necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. But the good news is America works because Americans work, and most Americans, the vast majority of Americans work. And if we get the ones that could work incentivized with better families to do the quality of work we need, then the nation would work a lot better. So this idea that we can't incentivize first graders, the families of first graders, to do first grade work by paying them at the end of the year because some first graders can't do first grade work is a little bit ridiculous, because we have a nation that is predicated on the idea that children develop into functional adults, into able adults, and that quality of ability isn't something that happens naturally. It happens through a particular kind of curriculum and program, which is why we have compulsory schooling and truancy if you don't go to school. And let's be honest, the purpose of compulsory schooling and truancy if you don't go to school isn't that we just want you to show up to school. We actually need you to learn things in order to be able to be functional as an American. So we have an idea of school as just a matter of attendance, but you don't actually have to learn things because it's not really important what you learn. And I'm just saying that actually for our democracy, both political, civil, and family, to work as this nation, we need you to actually be able to do things and develop you into the kind of person who could do things. So we need to take that development seriously and not just say it doesn't matter because not everybody can be an able American like the way I am discussing. So I hope everyone's picking up what I'm putting down. I want to be very clear what that is one more time. I want to pay families for having grade level appropriate kids. They don't have to be excellent. Some people say like, oh no, pay them for excellent. No, I want to pay families for just having proficient kids who can do work at their level, because I see a lot of people who cannot read at grade level, cannot do math at grade level, and it's largely because their families are not incentivized to spend the quality of time and energy required for them to do this kind of work, right? And so I want to incentivize them, because it is a little bit arbitrary insofar as you can have a legitimate family where the kids are illiterate, but you can't have a legitimate family in the United States of where the kids are literate. So in order to get you to do this kind of thing with your family instead of that kind of thing with your family, I want to pay you. Right? And I've done a video about this before, but then people say like, what about kids with disabilities? And I'm saying, that's not what America's for. Like, America is not for the disabled. It's for the able. And we can take disabled and we can make accommodations for the disabled, and we can kind of jerry-rig America, but we need you to be able to do things. It's not for the people who cannot do. America is not for, there are other nations for the people who cannot do, who have other people to do, and then they just kind of pay you off so that you don't, they pay you off so that you don't raise such a fuss, and we don't expect you to do things. No, in America, we expect everybody to do things, and then the people who can't do are outliers, and we do not understand policy. Now, we can be creative in how we allow everyone to contribute in their way, but we can't pretend that it's okay that you are disabled. It's not actually okay. It is not okay that you are disabled. You need to be able to contribute. And so we need, as a society, to make sure everybody who can be taught to contribute is taught to contribute. Is taught to contribute and is developed in ways so that they can contribute. Because I need you to be able to actually understand arguments if you're going to vote. It's not enough that you're just kind of, born here in 18. I need you to actually understand the positions that are put forth and before you exercise your judgment and vote. Also, like I said, I need you to be a competent parent. That means you need like a quality of development, intellectual development to problem solve and how to raise your kids. I need that for you in order for me to live my life. All right. So this isn't a nation for the disabled. This is for the nation, for the people who can do things. And so I want our government, all of our policies and institutions to be organized to be able to do things. And I'll bring people in to the doing things economy. I want to, and not just pretend that it's okay that you can't do things. And it's okay that 10th graders are reading at the 3rd grade level. Because it's not, well, we tried. No, if you really tried, you would incentivize their parents so that they wouldn't get behind to begin with. Right? So, we need to talk the truth about ableism in the United States, because we are a nation where we actually expect people to do things. Am I advocating for eugenics? No, I'm advocating for democratic proficiency. I don't need excellence. Some people think, well, the most important thing is for everyone to be excellent. No, but we need a nation where everyone can read. We need a nation where everyone can follow an argument. If that's eugenics, that's just democratic competence. Like I don't know what to tell you. We need a nation where everyone can do basic numeracy. I'm not saying that everyone needs to learn upper level calculus or multivariable calculus or differential equations. No, but I think every 3rd grader should be able to do 3rd grade math. Every 3rd grader should at least be able to do 2nd grade math. And then 4th graders should be doing 3rd grade. And we need basic literacy and numeracy. And That's not, you can call that eugenics, but I just think you're advocating for, you're just pretending that you can have a democracy full of people who don't have the conditions to actually participate meaningfully in civil life, family life, or political life. And you're pretending that these things come out naturally and they aren't developed through our institutions. So I need people to actually participate in the institutions of development in a way that will end in a competent civil society, in a competent political sphere, and in a competent family. So I think we just, but I don't think that this happened by punishing teachers, holding teachers accountable. I used to be like, I don't think teachers are very good at their jobs, right? So if every teacher was as good as I am, we'd have a better nation. But I don't think that's real. I'm kind of great at it. I'm great at teaching because I pay attention to students and I can kind of see when I'm losing them and bring them in a way. I'm great at that. I don't think it's appropriate to expect every teacher to be as good at it as I am. I've matured so that I don't believe that it's appropriate for every teacher to be as good as I am. What I do think, though, is that everyone can be a better parent, right? So you can either have like everyone be all public school teachers be outstanding teachers, or people just like kind of direct and focus their parent game a little bit better. And I think that's actually reasonable. I actually think it's reasonable because parents and students' interests, parents and kids' interests align. And a lot of parents actually just don't know how to be better than they are. And with the right kind of guidance and like incentives, I actually think we could turn a lot of D parents into B- parents, especially if we pay them to get over a C+. Like, I think we could pay a lot of F parents, and I think we can turn a lot of F parents into C+ parents who actually want to do it, but they just don't know that they're bad at it. A lot of parents don't know that they're bad at parenting. A lot of even rich parents don't even know how bad they are at parenting. I feel like the pandemic showed that up. But so if we restructure it kind of incentives, we can kind of obviate the need for every school teacher to be excellent by raising the floor for parenting in a way that actually the incentive is better. Because I think schools are right now organized for certain sorts of families, and they're very good for those sorts of families. And for the people who are not from those sorts of families, schools are not very good for you. And so and it's not that hard to incentivize more families to be those sorts of families. Because once I said, I'm not looking for excellence. I just want fourth graders to be able to do third grade work. All of them. Almost like 95% of fourth. I want 95% of seventh graders to be able to do sixth grade work. And I don't think that's too much to ask. And I think we lose that at the parenting, not necessarily at the schools. I mean, we can make it at the school level, but it's too hard to align teachers' interests with their students. Plus, they're structurally disadvantaged because there's so many more students than teachers. So I actually think, how do you know if you're excellent? Look, if you have to ask questions, you're not. You're not. I've read my reviews. I know, and I know my own kids. I'm very good. I'm very good at teaching, and a lot of it's just because I'm very good at paying attention to other people. And that's a lot, just kind of picking up when it gets lost and coming up with different analogies and different things. A lot of people don't have the patience to do that. And I'm absurdly patient because so many people and authorities have kind of treated me like crap for so long. That's kind of how I was raised, that I don't have the same sort of entitlements that people have with respect to teaching. I realized that, especially I look around at all these moms, especially liberal women, are not as good at teachers as they think because they have come in with entitlements and they expect children to treat them a certain way, but children don't treat you the way you're used to be treating. Well, how do you know that I'm an excellent parent? Look, man, let's just say I I know that I'm an excellent parent. Anyway, so a lot of these liberal women expect children to treat them a certain way because everybody else in their life is treating them a certain way, but they don't know that like children don't coddle to you and that everybody else was actually coddling to you, even though you felt like you were oppressed. And so they end up being both bad parents and bad teachers, but like you can't tell liberal women anything. So, so yeah, that's the best disposition you can kind of bring to it. A punishment for pain and just being able to notice when you lose the audience. And notice who gets what, and be able to check in. It's a don't block me, but you sound like Vivek. Well, Vivek Ramaswamy, who said American culture is kind of dicey. Well, he was right about a lot of things. There's a reason I sound like Vivek. Look, families that do it well you have no idea what they look like. You have no idea what they look like, and because anybody who comes from a functional particular family knows that not all families work like they do. And it's the people who come from dysfunctional families who assume that all families are dysfunctional like theirs is. They've never actually seen a functional family. So they just assume everybody's a hack like their parents were. I'm just saying. But actually some families are actually run right. And once you've seen one that's run right, like you realize that others are not so well. Same with classrooms. You could think, all teachers are as bad as blank teachers until you actually see a teacher who's actually good at the job. Then you're like, I guess there is a difference. So what I am telling you is that we need to be honest about ableism and that America works because Americans work. And Americans don't know how to work naturally, so Americans develop themselves into a quality of worker that can actually make this nation function. This isn't a nation where people don't work, and then the few people who do work redistribute and we pay everybody else off like the oil cartel nations like Saudi Arabia. This is the nation where everybody actually has to participate. And so we need an education that assumes that everybody can participate and that trains people to participate and that it's not okay to like not participate. Now, Australia is the other side of this because they force people to vote. But right. So parents of kids with disabilities have to work. I think, the most people I get the pushback from isn't necessarily the kids with parents with disabilities. It's their allies. Liberal allies. And these are the people who are bad at everything. Liberal allies, just like male feminists. They're just bad at everything. Female feminists aren't much better. But it's the allies who don't get the importance. The disabled allies who want accommodations for everything without understanding that some people have to actually work. And we can accommodate as much as we can accommodate, but at the end of the day, a thing still has to get done. A thing has to be taught, and then that thing has to be realized, and work has to be done based on what's taught. So any kind of idea of a democracy where that's okay with a large percent of the people not learning how to read or do numeracy, that's not gonna function. That's not gonna function. So we can talk about disabled people as the outliers, and we can talk about accommodations, but we have to always be geared towards eventually you're functional, because that's the only way America works. And with the assumption that most people are going towards functionality and need to be moved towards functionality. And if we have a large group of people who are dysfunctional, then that's a problem for everybody. Does a lot of this quit being a crisis as soon as we decommodify basic human needs like education? No, because actually the market, so I'm not an anti-capitalist. Like I said, I want to pay parents for parenting in a way that's grade appropriate. I want to pay parents at the end of the year, your kid takes a test in fourth grade. If they can do third grade reading at the end of fourth grade, they get $10,000. Right? I want, at the end of the year, if your kid comes into kindergarten and can do phonics, then you get $20,000 just right off the boat. Like, that's what I want. Would I describe my parenting style as an authoritative one? Yes, I'm the authority. I'm the authority. Well, my wife and I are. Like, we figure out and the kids do, and we take in their input and then we decide what's going to happen. Yes, I would describe my parenting as an authoritative one because, like, I'm the authority in this household. Yeah, look, honestly, most sped teachers I know are pretty incompetent people. So, Sublime, good luck. My experience with your ilk has not been the greatest. So, I'm sure you're trying hard collecting a check. It's about civil functioning now. There will be higher order problems when families raise kids that know more and expect more from society. Yeah, there'll be interesting problems, I think. But those are the problems we should embrace as a democracy. I'm reading Zachary Curtis's comment. So, yeah. Some people say, like, well, some kids might get abused. Well, there might be a little bit there might be a little bit of an adjustment period as people understand, like, their $20,000 meal check is tied to their kids learning, phonics, but also it's phonics. So we could have an entire systems around helping kids get there when they need to get there. Get that, like, so it's not, like I said, what I think it's very important, that, what I'm not talking about is necessarily being in the top 95th percentile or anything. I'm just talking about expecting second graders to do second grade work and fourth graders to do fourth grade and third grade work, which is something we don't know now. I think J.K. Hancock says it pretty well. We don't push our kids hard enough in school unless they are gifted in a gifted program. Other kids are just shuffled through the system. That's 100% right. But I don't think the pressure can come from schools necessarily and is best pressure from schools. It's just there are too many incompetent teachers with too many conflicts of interest. I think it'd be better to incentivize parents to be slightly better and more focused on these kinds of issues than they are. Because either we expect all teachers to be great, or just parents have to lift their game just a little bit. But you can't expect adults to do anything unless you dangle money in front of them. So I want to pay adults to work in the way that the nation wants them to work. Are you a school teacher? Jesus, these people. All right, so Sublime asks, am I a school teacher? I taught undergraduates at UGA, and then I volunteer in schools sometimes. I'm just very good at this. I had all these ideas about child rearing, and people say, like, well, you'll never know unless you're a parent. And then I became a parent, and then my kids are awesome. So, like, maybe I'm just right about these things, and you've been collecting a check doing a job badly. Sublime's one of these people, like, who was probably really into sight words when they came out, and it's like, well, it's a very good tool. Sight words are garbage. And any teacher, like, who didn't see that, like, immediately is probably trash too, because it was obviously garbage. But most teachers are trash, and that's just fine. But we need to understand that America functions because people function, and we need to incentivize parents, not necessarily teachers, because, like I said, there are too many conflicts of interest to actually expect teachers to actually all be excellent. So, but we can expect parents to be a little bit better than they are because they're unified with their interests are unified with the parents are unified in their interests with the children. And what I said before about the $20K for reading, and not just reading, Just phonics. $20K for your kid going into kindergarten with basic phonics. And with that, you can spend the money for like putting away $4,000 to gear that kid up for all the extra and co-curricular activities that'll get them ready for the end of the year test, which will be on kindergarten, and get them to be able to pass, basic kindergarten level. Not excellent, just at level. I want everybody who's at the level to be doing the work at the level, and pay people for that, because at the level is fine for a democracy. Now, we need excellence in a different way, but we need, the first things first, we need everybody who's supposed to be at level, at level. What is the end goal of educating academic elites? All right, so I'm not talking about academic elites. I'm talking about the end goal of public education. And right now we think the end goal of public education is getting people to show up for 12 years. Like there isn't necessarily content. And I'm saying the end goal of public education is actually a basic functioning citizenry that can follow arguments, basic numeracy, can be able to solve their own problems with abstract thinking in such a way. And all these things can be tested. You don't have to be elite at these things. But for a democracy, we need everybody to be able to function. We need everybody to be able to do these things. And doing these things is not natural. And you need to be institutionalized into doing these things. Aren't we just being taught to memorize information? No, I mean, not really. You can test. People give standardized tests a bad rap, but for the most part, if you can read and do math, you could pass a standardized test on reading and doing math. And if you can't read and do math, you can't pass a standardized test for doing math. I trust standardized tests way more than I trust grades. Grades are just a matter of how well you can suck up to your teacher for any feelings or anything like that. Like grades are trash. But standardized testing, if you're against standardized testing, I just think you're stupid. Especially for the basic things that I'm talking about right now, because standardized tests test your ability to do at this level. Now, at the higher levels, maybe tests can be gamed and there's a problem. But for the most part, a standardized math test at second grade tests whether you can do second grade math. We have a bar for law school for a reason. We have the medical boards for medical school for a reason. You know what your bar mitzvah is? It's a standardized test that you teach to, and at the end of the test, everyone gives you money. That's your bar and bat mitzvah. These are confirmation if you're a Catholic, or not a Catholic, a Protestant. Does confirmation not measure your spiritual acumen? Doesn't register your Christianity? Should we ditch confirmation and just be able to do with your heart? Should you be able to ditch your bar and bat mitzvah and just kind of profess your love for Yahweh? No! We have tests because studying for the tests actually makes sure that you can intelligently do the thing. So, yeah, I am very suspicious of people who are against. Yeah, we have the AP program. The AP program is we're going to organize this entire class around the test. And those are often people's most contentful class. I still know the things I learned in AP Bio in a way that I do not know other things. So there's a way to learn information without memorizing information. Look, memory and reaction time matter. I don't understand. We need to stop pretending that you need to be able to do things, and you need to be able to do things quickly. You need to be able to memorize things, and you need to be able to think with a sort of rapidity. And that matters. That matters. I think of Sophocles, who said memory is the mother of the muses. That means to do any sort of work concerning art or freedom, you need to have memory. And then in the test, you actually apply the rules you've memorized. So memory and reaction time matter. And if you don't think memory and reaction time matter, well, you're going to have a less meaningful life than the people who actually think memory and reaction time matter. All right. So, yeah, some things need to be gamified. Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no. I'm a little bit suspicious because I think we sell games as a way to get rid of the kind of frustration of one-on-one tutoring and teaching. And because it's through one-on-one tutoring and teaching that like everyone will not be Rhodes Scholars. So this is when Sublime is being intentionally obtuse. Everyone, she says, or I assume she's a she, everyone will not be Rhodes Scholars, and we don't need a society of robots. All right. So first of all, Rhodes, the name, it's spelled a different way. But second of all, I was very clear, unless you're being intentionally obtuse, I'm asking for basic competence and not excellence and not distinguished. I think second graders should do second grade work. I think people who graduate high school should be able to do the work appropriate to people who graduate high school. like this, I am not one of those guys who said like, well, everybody has to be learn Greek and Latin and German, although more people should learn Greek and Latin and German, because if you learn Greek and Latin and German, you kind of know how English works. But I just think that there's a reason we have grade level work, and everyone at that grade level should be able to do the grade level work. And we need to be serious about moving people who can't do grade level work at the grade level, because there are just too many kids in these high schools that now are in second grade and third grade work, because like we were fine moving them through and telling them that coloring's okay, and that we were just fine with the fact that they couldn't actually be literate or numerate. Right? So I think it's insulting to hardworking Americans who contribute every day but maybe can't play the violin or solve calculus. Yeah, I don't need them to play the violin or solve calculus. I need them to be able to work with their kids to get their second grade kid up to second grade level work. And I will pay them to do that. I will pay them to do that. I will pay them to do that. And I do believe, and I do think that this actually gives workers more room to negotiate with their bosses about like, look, if you don't give me the raise, I can make more money actually and enjoy it more, putting it with my kid to make sure that my kid gets, the $10,000 bonus at the end of the year. So I actually think it would balance a power between workers and students. Yeah, for one of the few times I actually agree with Karl Kosnak. Standardized tests, so long as everyone held to the same standard, aren't the problem, right? And like I said, not everybody needs to be able to do differential equations. I'm just saying everybody who's at the grade level should be able to do the grade level work, and the teachers aren't going to be able to get them there. No amount of carrots and sticks are going to be able to make the teachers get there. But the parents can get them there if we give parents the right kind of incentives and start them from the ground up. And there are all these excuses. Bree Breezy's giving one. Parents have to work all the time just to pay rent and put food on the table. Yeah, then they shouldn't have kids, right? So we need to understand that that's not a good enough excuse. That's not a good enough excuse. Parents need to parent. That's not a good enough excuse for like not spending the time. So we need to organize society to allow parents to parent, not just give excuses for parents need to parent. And honestly, there are a lot of choices people make with respect to kids. They shouldn't have taken that job. They should take this job instead of that job. They should take the demotion to spend more time with their kids. Standardized testing doesn't work for everyone. It works for everyone who can read. Everyone who can read. People say, well, standardized testing doesn't work for everyone. Well, you know what? If you have a standardized test for people for second graders, it works for all the second graders who can do second grade work. And if they can't do second grade work, they can't pass a test. It's not ridiculous. I mean, what if they're single parents? My mom was raised by a single mom. I was raised by a single mom. What if, so first of all, we should stigmatize single parents. Second of all, I'm asking for people to do work. Unless we're going to say that school is just daycare and only a certain percentage of people, only the top 20% of people could actually do the work anyway. Everyone else is just kind of filling in the rows, which is what a lot of people say about schools, and a lot of people act about schools even if they don't say it. we need to actually get rid of some of our excuses. Get rid of some of our excuses about why we can't expect families, or like what we can do to make sure families help their kids be at grade level. Parents need finance, and I'm giving parents financial help. $20,000 just for phonics. That is financial help. $20,000 just for phonics. When you tell me that parents need financial help, yeah. And if you can't do that, then like you're so bad at being parent, like you shouldn't be a parent. For people saying like, it's too hard to expect me to make sure my kid knows that the D sound goes with duh. Yeah, well, that's you don't have the skills to be a parent then, if that's too hard. Because I'm not even saying that you have to sit down with them, although maybe I think you should. You need to actually vet your preschool enough so that at least they can like teach basic phonics at the preschool level, so that when they go into kindergarten, they see a CH and they go the ch. That's all I'm asking. You get $20,000 just for your kid knowing basic phonics and to be able to count. That's not great. All right, so hey, Armin, great job on Bree's podcast the other day. You should have Zed on your show. I should have Zed. So Zed's a funny guy. Because I think we get along in a lot of ways, and I think we'd have an interesting time critiquing the Democrats. I think we'd have an interesting, I think we'd come at it in a different way. And I wonder how his politics have changed. And you know what? Thanks you. I'm going to actually send Zed a message after this, see if he'd like to come on. That would be a hoot of a discussion. Two kids. Yeah. All right. That would actually be pretty funny. All right. So, thank you for your time. When will you finish my doctorate? When I'm done writing this book. Right. So right now I have to do this for, this is how I feed my family on the internet. And then my kids are in that time right now that other people don't think is important. I have a 7, a 10, and a 12-year-old. And I spend a lot of time making sure that they know everything that they need to know in a way that nobody ever spent time on me. And I know a lot of academics who kind of took the writing and the academia more seriously than they took the rearing of the kids. And then the rearing of the kids fell by the wayside. So, I'm writing a book on no-fault divorce right now, and how no-fault divorce is a form of child abuse that we don't talk about because kids are owed a world where the governing structures actually intentionally recognize them and recognize the conditions of their agencies. And that goes away when you're saying that they're not owed a unified household. The parents can't even be bothered with the inconvenience of creating a unified household that screws up the kid's agency in ways that are not obvious. And so I'm writing this book on no-fault divorce, but when you write a book on no-fault divorce, you gotta put in so many footnotes and make every argument so close that I'm just doing it the right way and going slow. Yeah, and I don't believe in homeschooling necessarily because not everyone has a disposition. I just believe in parents who are attentive. Because you don't have to homeschool in order to be proficient at the grade level. I'm just saying that you just have to make sure that your kid can do the things that they're supposed to be able to do in order to be at the place they are, so they're not just kind of phoning it in. Right. So if you lose a kid to death, war, and disease, that's actually not damaging in the same way as losing them to no-fault divorce. Because when you lose them to no-fault divorce, it's a quality of neglect and indifference, a studied indifference. It's parents who say actually the other parent didn't do anything wrong. I just don't want to be bothered with co-creating a family unit. When you lose them to something that's external to the will, like a death, a disease, or anything like that, that's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal because of resources and all these other things, but it's not the same sort of subjective blow to agency. The best example of this is death worse than divorce? I'm not sure it is. I'm not is divorce worse than death? I'm not sure it is, because when your parents just decide that like it's not worth it to create a unified family for you, that is like what that does to your idea of what the world will and will not uphold for you. It's more akin to, is it better to lose your job because the whole industry gets wiped out? Or is it better to lose your job? Is it better to lose your job just because you kind of get cut in a fickle way? Or is it better to lose your job? Or is it better to lose your job if you, if someone, like, if your employer hires in an H-1B immigrant? Or is it better to lose your job if, like, the whole industry goes away? I think it's better to lose your job if the whole industry goes away, because it's not a quality of personal indifference, right? If, like, so many institutions have to break down before someone will hire an illegal immigrant to come take your job, so many institutions that are supposed to recognize you as a worker would have to hire. Have to break down. Would I rather die or get divorced? Well, getting divorced is up to me, right? Like like a no-fault divorce is up to me. So I would rather, I just wouldn't get divorced. This idea that I had to get divorced, like, no. No, that's the thing about what no-fault divorce introduces. It's like parents at their own discretion, just because they don't feel like it, can dissolve a child's home. Kids can visit a divorced parent, but they also live with a parent who just abandoned their need for a unified family just because. So, like, if your parent dies from, like, a sudden whatever, or like your parent dies because of a disease, like, that's nobody's fault. It doesn't undermine agency in the same way. It doesn't undermine agency in the same way. Yeah, one of the reasons why I have to do this write the argument so carefully is because a lot of people are just, like, coping with the fact that they screwed up. Yeah, they abandoned the kid's need for a unified family. Like, parallel parenting isn't parenting. That's the idea that, like, you parent for 1 week and then you send them off to a black box where they parent for another week, and you can't talk to the other parent about how they parent because, like, you have no authority over them, and they're not, like, there's no responsibility to compromise. And then you get the kid back after they've done God knows what for a week, and you just have to deal with that. That's not real parenting. That's not real. That's like, the kid doesn't have any sort of unified way to be. And they know that the world is only held together by the random feelings of authority figures. There's no commitment. There's no ethics. So I think you get a lot of guys who are skittish and women who are mercenaries, who come from this, like, no-fault divorce culture that we've introduced in the last 30 or 40 years. And because it does a quality of damage to the subjectivity, that, like, if your dad dies in a war, you still trust institutions. If your parents just kind of divorce just cause, and they're so indifferent to creating a unified household for you to live in, that undermines agency in a way that's not obvious. But yeah, so that's what I'm writing on. It's going to take me a while. I'll finish when I finish. One is an immutable biological reality. Okay, so now you just sound like an idiot. All right, so I'm reading Karl Karsnak's comments because I want to be a responsive host. But thank you for your time. And I will talk to you next week about something else. I hope that I've enlightened you or helped you think a little bit more carefully about how we need. You can be a surgeon and an idiot too. A lot of surgeons screw up their lives. I've seen the records for a lot of people. Yes, I bet Carl knows that surgeons didn't live a long time, right? I remember that they were like the shortest living doctors for a while. Their median, was it average or median lifespan was only like 58. So it's not surgeons are bad people. And then my mom was a nurse, and she was telling me about this surgeon who got a meth habit because the surgeon, wanted to live this surgeon lifestyle. So they married a woman, but to keep the woman happy, he needed to keep extra shifts, and he had student loans to pay back. And so he ended up with like drug habits upon drug habits upon drug habits. So, surgeons. And then I went to school with a bunch of people who then became surgeons, and some of them are like really smart and really like thoughtful people, and other of them like just are so bad with people that they had to deal with them when they were asleep. And so it's a little bit, it goes other ways. It come and goes. It's a skill. It's a skill. It's a skill. So what do I want to say? Yeah, what I wanted you to learn from this. What I want you to learn from this podcast is that America works because Americans work. And so we need to train Americans to be able to work, and not just in civil society at their job, but they work insofar as parenting should be work, and you need to be competent and develop skills. And if you don't learn those skills in school, you need to learn the conditions in order to be able to do the research, to learn the skills at home in order to figure out what to feed your kid and all that stuff. And whether to and because you're going to have to get rid of bad advice, the teachers who say that sight words are okay. And all the bad advice from liberals who will tell you about parenting, you have to be able to discern and do your own research with respect to that. And you also need to be able to learn and read and have basic numeracy in order to be a political partner with me in democracy. So you need to be able to learn things. You need to be able to do things. You need to be able to do things. America depends on you being able to participate both in civil society, but in family life and in politics. And we need to stop pretending. We need to stop pretending. Yeah, we need to stop pretending that Americans can't do things or don't need to do anything. Man, Carl, you're on one. I wish you were a little bit more secure. Hey, look, man, I live my little life, and I just kind of speak on the internet. And I help people try not to get divorced, and you open up people and sew them back together. I think that's fine. I think you do you things, and I'll try to help people not get divorced. And one of us will be memorable. I had a colonoscopy the other day, and that's very nice. I'm sure the person who does that is very good. I have no idea who it was. I was asleep at the time. And if they do that their whole life, at the end of their funeral, and I've been to a few funerals of people in the medical profession, people will have very little to say about them because I don't know, nor do I care who the person who did my colonoscopy was. And they were, it's a surgical procedure. So that person, did the thing. And if that's the meaning that they give to people's life, that's the same meaning that I know as much about them and care about as much about them as I care about my garbage person, who also is doing a very important service without which you should care who my doctors are. But what if I don't? What if I don't? Just like I should care who my garbage person is, and I don't. So there's a way in which, I'm glad that you think that you're relevant, but it might be the case that more people might remember me in a more meaningful way in their lives than remember you. But it's okay. You'll get paid more than I do. Maybe. And by the way, if you support me getting paid at all, I think you're going to go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50. I literally have no idea that more people might remember what I do for them than will remember what you do for them. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I kind of think, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close. We'll check at the funerals. Look, I suspect if I were to get stricken down right now with a heart attack, I suspect it's possible that more people would be rocked by me dying than by you, Carl, dying. And I just got to understand, you just have to understand, and you just have to be okay with that, man. That just might be the case. It might not be the case. Maybe there are a lot of people like, maybe that'd be the case. I think your funeral might be nicer, but I suspect my people, I suspect more people would be like moved in a more important way and like would lose more from me. And I might be, and I'll say this, Carl, you just might have to sit with this and maybe the comment will agree. I might be less fungible than you are. I might be less fungible than you are. We're producing surgeons in the way that we don't produce people like me. Like, you will be replaced easier than I am in people's lives. You're just going to have to sit with that. It's okay. That's why you get paid bigger money and more secure money. But you will be replaced. You will be replaced. We can import Carl. That's funny. That's kind of funny. But like, you know, I'm just saying. Yeah, well, you know, I'll just kind of keep helping people not try to get divorced. And you can keep, saving lives. And, you know, we'll all just kind of do what we do. Who's begging for money? Not me. Yeah, I beg for money. Because I don't want to do the Patreon. But, like, why are you even here? Why? I'm just thinking about, like, this is an interesting question. I do not have any drive at all to go see you do your work, but you're spending your free time on me. But I would not do my work. So, you know, one of us is relevant. So, in a way that the other one's not. No, I want my garbage people to get paid, but you know, they're fungible. Anyway, thank you for your time. And I will talk to you at another time about something else. Peace.